Hello, greetings. We have a bit of controversy for today's Chainsaw Man chapter. I'm not too sure how I feel about it. Not the chapter, the controversy, because I read the chapter, went to Twitter, and seen a lot of people weren't really happy with the decision that Denji actually made. Now, on one hand, I understand. I get it. And to be fair, it wasn't that people were upset or hate this chapter. More so, they felt it was becoming a little bit more repetitive. Does that make sense? I can partially agree with that. But at the same time, I feel like chapters like these for Denji and for Chainsaw Man as a story are very much important. It's very easy to gloss over the experience that Denji has gone through. So when it happens time and time again, it's usually portrayed differently. This time is no exception. It's different. While the approach between Denji and this woman is similar, the outcome, the circumstances, and even the context is a little bit different. So much so that a majority of it is actually glossed over. It's only briefly shown to you. So I think Fujimoto himself knows that he can't always keep playing on this indecisive nature that Denji has when it comes to his fantasies and women and being manipulated and his self-worth, etc, etc. There's a big difference, however. So on one hand, I think it's fair to be maybe a little bit upset, but not as far as hating. But also, if you enjoyed it, you have that right as well. I'm not going to try and convince you that you should love this chapter or that you're wrong for feeling the way that you do potentially. Each to their own. For me personally, I had a great time with it. And I think there's a lot more context here that a lot of people have not taken into consideration. Now, understandably, that context is more theory crafting and looking at the bigger picture rather than soloing in on Denji's decision making. I think that's pretty fair, at least from my perspective. Let me put it like this. There's a brief moment where Denji, in his head, identifies his own self-worth. He thinks about things. He doesn't want to be manipulated. He doesn't want to go through these same hurdles and difficulties and this idea that is nothing of correlation to himself. He's experienced it before, he's experiencing it right now, but that is in his head. It's ripped away and he's suddenly doing those said things he didn't want to do. I think this is very purposeful. Fujimoto poking around within the community and playing with this idea a little bit more, but it's not as on the nose, at least for me, in comparison to other times. This wasn't a vital deep dive journey into Denji's subconscious mind or his feelings or his attitude toward things. There was no exploration of that. It was just there, and it was very quickly glossed over and replaced with a lot of humor, a lot of questions, and moved forward upon rather quickly. I would like to phrase all that I have just said with an idea. For me, this instance, this trying to push Denji to have a normal lifestyle, is purposefully manipulated by both Yoshida and Fami. I think they are slightly, weirdly, oddly enough, working together, but not in the buddy-buddy type ways. I think they have their own goals, their own agendas, but how they go about it is very much different, but kind of need each other to operate properly. Now, this is all theory circulating in my head. Yoshida wants to manipulate Denji to give him a normal life, so much so that he has threatened it. He even offered to be a friend and is now supplying this woman, very random girl. However, there could be an agenda for this, and that comes with Fami. See, there's this idea that with Nostradamus' prophecy, the Age of Devils, and the recent talk of the quote-unquote Black Chainsaw Man or Full Armor Pochita, for example, that being is going to be very vital to either make or break this prophecy. Now, Fami, one, offered Chainsaw Man, the Pochita version, to War. For her to be able to do that, either one or two things have to happen. She has to disconnect Denji from Pochita, which most likely cannot happen, or she can control Pochita. So the second thing that Famine may be trying to do is to starve Denji of what he genuinely enjoys, and instead replacing it with manipulated connections. Yoshida may be the stand-in for this, supplying a quote-unquote normal lifestyle. But he may not know what Fami is trying to do with Pochita. See, there is a very big thing that Fami has done, and that is able to starve a primordial fear. They are not weak beings. They are arguably some of the strongest that we have witnessed within the entirety of Chainsaw Man's story. I'm not a power scaler, but they are powerful. Pochita sits on a similar level, somewhere between being a horseman and a primal fear. His ability reflects that, being able to change the course of human history and the balance of the world just by potentially erasing the wrong things. This might sound all confusing, but when you have something like Nostradamus' prophecy, this age of devils that Fami supposedly wants to stop, the best way to potentially get rid of those things, or to at least have the best fighting chance, is to get Pochita out to play. And if Fami can starve Denji away from those things, she could take control. Basically weaponize Pochita and wield him like a Pokemon, thus offering it to Yoru so they can fight however they want, and potentially Yoru even weaponizing it under control as well. I don't know how the two control conflicting abilities would work, but I'm sure you can think about that. So far, this is the general idea. Why would she want Pochita? No one really knows, but Chainsaw Man as a human entity, no one's really fazed about. So much so that the Chainsaw Man society that was built surrounding the identity of Chainsaw Man and praising him is now being replaced, conveniently enough, with Asa. She is the one taking all of the fame and reception that Denji wanted. That's one thing already that is being pulled away from him. Do you see how convoluted it currently is becoming? We don't really know what Fami and Yoshida are trying to do. Are they working together directly, or do they just have similar goals and have kind of back and forth and are stepping on each other's toes? I don't think Yoshida would want Pochita of all people to be wielded by Fami, but then again, what does his organization want? At the same time, you send this random woman that eventually tries to kill him. Is this Yoshida's doing? Or is this something potentially supplied by Fami because she too goes to the same school? What's to say that all of these people right now that end up fighting Denji at the end of the chapter are not controlled by Fami, and Yoshida just genuinely has no clue? Is he that silly? Is it an oversight? Something he's okay with to get it into Denji's head? Who knows? What they don't account for is Denji's growth, how far he's come, what he's experienced, and kind of what he truly values. He may have these things, ideas, and objects that obviously he likes, but connection. He values that connection. That is something that can't really be manipulated all too easily. Sure, you can bring in a random woman or a friend even, but Denji has to vibe with them. When you offer something as shallow as sexual fantasies pleading to Denji's more obscure side, you don't really get the same connection or response that he had to, let's say, Power or Arcade. Now with time and experience, obviously that could evolve into something else entirely, but you can see him kind of question a lot of different things, and his reaction just being unaware. He's trying to think about things, but at the same time, he's been manipulated and kind of gaslit and groomed prior to this event actually happening. Let's just keep that in the back of our minds. He was prepped for this. He was beat down. He was told that he can't do this, he can't do that, he's gonna have a normal life, Yoshida can offer this and that, and then suddenly it happens. So he's already mentally dealing with a lot. The previous chapter, he felt alone, had no one, and then this random woman is here to play around with him to buy time. I will say I really like the end half of the chapter and the design of it, because they go to a karaoke bar, right? She starts singing, and in Denji's mind, right after they finish singing, they're about to have a proper adult session. Obviously does not happen, but the song she's singing, I actually seen a Twitter post with the music that it's actually based off. Perfect. Like, you cannot tell me that Fujimoto did not design this with that intention. He was listening to this song, thought about this interaction, and then drew it while listening to it. So now we have all these random men, but they're not fighting properly. They're here to jump Denji, of course. They have baseball bats, but no one has a gun. No one really has anything else like a sword or some other weapon that could actually do really bad damage. It's more like they just have baseball bats. You probably think that's a weird thing to pick out. This whole situation's weird, because she gets on it as well. She's singing the whole time Denji's fighting these people, and then right at the end, she picks up a bat, and these two are about to fight. Now, throughout all of this, Denji does not transform. He doesn't really need to, but it's also in the back of his head that he shouldn't, and that he can't because of Naoyuta, and because of what Yoshida said. So we have this situation where whatever this woman is, whether she's just a normal human being, but at this point it's looking more like a lust devil of some sort, who knows, they are about to fight. Now what was pointed out to me, which I really liked, was that Denji manages to fly through everyone, all of these random men, and they're laying in the hallway. It's a nice little panel of him, right? And you see him smiling and grinning because this is his area. He loves this stuff. But when this random girl picks up the bat, all of the bodies in the hallway behind them have disappeared. Magically gone. The whole place is clean. There's not even a speck of blood. So is it an oversight by Fujimoto, or is this something done on purpose? Because then we trail into this idea of manipulation and mind control and this and that, like the building they're in potentially being something. Who knows? it's hard to put your finger on what is actually going on here, because this is done for a reason. This is either Fami doing it or Yoshida doing it, and it's more leaning towards Fami because Yoshida, I just don't understand. He's working for an organization, and yet they employ arguably one of their most powerful enforcers to keep an eye on Denji. The reason for that is because he's the hero of hell. That full armor Pochita is something you shouldn't just let out in the wild on its own. But then Fami's here to manipulate it and throw it all up again, so realistically, at the end of this chapter, we're kind of just left with, what on earth is going on? Personally, I think the next handful of chapters is going to slightly, at least I hope, clear up the weirdness between Fami and Yoshida, as well as potentially Nostradamus' prophecy. But it would be very funny if, when we're slightly breaching over to some more clarity, some more answers, Asa comes in and saves the day. For what it's worth, I really enjoyed it. I didn't have a problem with the whole Denji self-worth thing at the beginning because it was never really played upon. Like, it's there, it exists, but it's glossed over very quickly. I would argue the previous chapter does a lot more to show you just mentally and emotionally where Denji's currently sitting. And let's not forget that he's not a normal human being. He's never had a normal upbringing. He's only just now going to school and learning about things, yet he doesn't really have any friends. His mind, his process of elimination, and genuinely just how he thinks about himself is so incredibly different. It's not something that's going to snap into place perfectly. And even when it snaps into place and is like arguably a good thing for himself, it's still going to be challenged. That's what it's always been. In some way, shape or form, his own selfish desires has always been challenged by something. Whether you like it or not, entirely up to you to decide. I enjoyed it, I appreciate it, and I'm excited to see where Fujimoto goes from here. No chapter next week, unfortunately, a little bit disappointing, but we do have one on the 9th of August. I might have a couple of different videos here and there to fill in the blanks in the meantime. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, it supports me a ton, and I'd greatly appreciate it.